The Craft Legacy is a sequel but also reboot to the original because it basically follows beat for beat the original story structure of that first film. A new girl moves to a new town, a new school. She's unpopular there. She doesn't fit in, and she meets this group of girls that want to, I guess, connect with her. That was the story of the first film, right? And this film, the sequel, follows that same type of structure as the original with a few story tweaks to keep it something fresh, to keep it something new. And while a lot of people, teenagers and all that, haven't really heard of The Craft, this was, I guess, to give them an introduction while being a sequel and staying true to the fans of the original. But this was more of a more modern take with more based in reality and more grounded characters. And that's not to say the first film didn't have that. I watched The Craft last night for the first time and I very much enjoyed it. I loved Nev Campbell scream anybody, and yeah, the cast I thought was terrific, and I really enjoyed that film overall, but I wasn't a big fan of it. I didn't find myself loving it like I do with a lot of other horror movies. And while The Craft is a more, I guess, character driven, it's more through our main character's perspective. I was excited going into The Craft Legacy. For one, Blumhouse. I like a lot of what Blumhouse is doing at the moment. They've brought us a lot of iconic franchises such as The Purge, Paranormal Activity, and many more. So hearing Blumhouse was involved in the Craft sequel, I was excited to see what their take on this would be. And since I'm a big fan of Blumhouse, that was one of the main reasons why I saw this. I didn't really have any high expectations going in. Now let's get a little bit into what I liked in The Craft Legacy. So the acting, chemistry, and banter between this group of girls that we followed throughout this runtime was really good. Not so much on the character side of things, but as far as the chemistry and the banter goes, between this group of girls, I thought it really bounced off screen really well. The simple little conversations, the relationship they had, the connection, I thought it was believable enough on screen, which I will get into that also a little bit later on. But I think for the most part, there is a friendship built somewhat between this group of girls, not as strong in this one as in the first film, because I thought the way they handled the pacing and the storytelling in the first Craft was it was paced out much better, and there was actually time given to these characters, and there were actually real life problems going on outside of their school life. And that was one thing that really made those characters relatable. But that the first film really captured that the high school life of a student. The sequel, on the other hand, while I will still say it's good, it's not as good or as well handled, should I say, as in the first film. But like I said, I will get into that. So you're talking about the characters. The outside of our main character, Lily, which her character develops over this runtime, over the period of this story, we learn more about her past and all that. The other three girls that have these witch-like powers, they have zero characterization. Like I said, outside of our main character, Lily, which the story is driven from her perspective, this is her narrative, this is her story. Outside of her, the other characters are very weak. There's no characterization, there's no, story diving into their past or who they are or how they got their powers. You learn nothing about these other these other girls that have similar powers to Lily. They're just kind of there because this is a craft movie, and we need characters with witch-like powers. Um, and I thought that was a real shame in this. To talk about the editing here as well, this film is paced and edited horribly. Because the first two acts are rushed over so fast. Like there's no time in this for you to actually get immersed or to get sucked into these characters' story. They just kind of show up and then witch powers start happening. There's no them learning how to do it. They just kind of jump into it. They just kind of meet in the bathroom, and yeah, there's that's really that's the best way I can nail down the introduction to these characters. These witches, I guess, find out that she has powers as well, and so they follow her into the bathroom. It really makes it hard to root for these characters when there's nothing as the viewer to attach yourself onto. In the first film, they nailed that really well. They actually gave you characters with problems and with backstories and all that. In this one, they're just kind of characters with none of the magic or charm that the first film gave to its characters. And I think a lot of that comes from the editing, because the first two acts honestly just feel like montages after another. Because the characters meet and then only a few short minutes after you see them doing magic, and they're actually pretty good at it, which makes no sense when I guess the fourth chosen one only just found out she has powers and she's only just discovered, and there's no training. She just kind of knows how to do it. But yeah, it just feels like a series of montages of just these girls just showcasing their powers to the viewers with no explaining behind it. Putting all that aside for now, I will come back to the editing and pacing later on, but just moving on, the next point I have written down is the twist. This is going to be a controversial point, but I actually like the twist. To me, it makes sense. I won't get into spoilers. The film is out, but without getting into spoilers, if you haven't seen it, don't worry, I won't talk about anything major about this twist, but it makes sense why our main character has powers. I'll put it that way. It makes sense, and the film scatters little hints throughout that kind of lead to this twist. There is one point in this movie where our main character finds out that she is adopted, and that her mother isn't actually her mother, and that there's these other secrets that her mother is hiding from her that she hasn't told her yet. And then as those secrets start to come out, you can kind of predict where this twist is going. But to me, why it made the most sense is because Lily, she has powers, and it makes sense. So I can, to be honest, it is very hard to talk about this twist without talking about spoilers, because I have to talk about this twist with spoilers. It's a lot hard to explain. So yes, spoiler warning. If you want to see the Craft Legacy, it's available to rent now if you want to go see it. But yeah, that's your warning. So spoilers ahead. So the twist is Nancy, that Nancy is actually Lily's mother. So Nancy already had powers in the first film, and if she had a Lily, she would have had to have Lily while she was in this mental institution, is where we left off. In the first film, that's where the first film ended, and so like that's at least that's the way that it makes sense to me. Is that is it's just is it's the blood is it's the bloodline, is it's just like she's just kind of coming. So there's a little bit of Nancy in Lily, since Lily is Nancy's baby who had powers before her, which like that makes sense to me. So I wasn't really I wasn't really disappointed by the twist, because I thought there were enough hints throughout the runtime leading to the twist, and as I guess as Lily's adopted mother, I guess unfolds these secrets that have been hidden all this time. It makes sense. It makes sense to me. So I was disappointed. I was disappointed in a way where Nancy doesn't really have much of a comeback. She's in one shot. She turns to the camera, and then we fade to, and then we cut to the credits. And so that there's no dialogue. There's no like, where have you been? Why didn't you tell me you were my mother? Or just there's no questioning. It just kind of cuts, and that would have been at least a good moment for our main character. But that's just like a minor little nitpick for me. I was expecting Nancy to come back in this grand way where she would help out the girls, but obviously that's not the end result that we got. And I felt like the end result that we did get with this twist was a much better comeback than I had in mind, because I think it connects itself well to the first film, and it connects itself well to our main character Lily, and it explains why she has these powers in the first place and why she's the fourth chosen one, and all that. So I wasn't disappointed. I thought it helped clear up some of this stuff that happened early on in the film, and it kind of, I guess, explains why she knows how to use her powers in the first place, like how she like immediately knows how to use them. I know a lot of people don't like the twist in this movie, and that is fine by me. You're stated to your own opinion. That is your right. But as I lay on the twist ending, I actually liked it. Maybe in a few years when I go back and watch The Craft Legacy, I may feel differently about it. But yeah, like I said, as I lay now, I like this twist ending. I defend this twist ending. So yeah, let's move on. Characters, yeah, I already talked about that. Editing, I did say I would come back to the editing, so I'll talk more about that now. So the editing was a big problem for me in the first two acts of this movie, because the first two acts just feel like a series of montages with these girls. Sorry, because you see them doing magic in one scene, and then in another they're talking, and then in another scene they're doing magic, and then in another scene they're doing something completely different. And just it doesn't really feel like there's any relationship. All the chemistry and the banter is through these series of montages that you see these girls doing magic and doing spells and all that. There's no real flow to it all. There's no real life connection to these characters, because it's rushed over in the editing so much. The first two acts are cut to shit, because it's just and not only is the editing a problem, the pacing of of really the whole movie in general, but the first two acts especially, because there's no flow, there's no real like back and forth chemistry. Just the chemistry that you see is just through these characters like having fun, laughing, smiling, the small little conversations, like I said. And that's one of the things I loved about that first movie is it nailed the editing and the pacing of the chemistry. It felt all natural. It felt the pacing of it all felt very natural, but in this one, it feels very forced. And like I blame a lot of that probably on just on the editing, not so much on the screenplay, because I'm sure the screenplay they had was a lot better than what was intended, but there just felt like there was a lot cut out of the first two acts of this movie. So yeah, the screenplay, yeah, like I've said, the screenplay could have been a lot better. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that aren't explained. Like there's a scene when one of the brothers in this household is like sleepwalking and is looking at Lily in the darkness in the night, during the night, and that's not really explained why that's happening. Maybe like he can sense that she is a witch or something. Like I don't know, because it's never explained. There and yeah, so the screenplay, like while it's not as strong as the first film, I think it does its job as being a sequel and a reboot. I'd say the emotional state of this film, I prefer in Legacy, rather to the original, because I felt like the emotional scenes in this, I thought hit a lot better than they did in the original, and I felt like the pacing. I felt like is even though I have ranted about the pacing wasn't always terrible throughout this film. It was just in a lot of those first two acts, but then scattered throughout Act Two, there are scenes throughout where the pacing is good. And I'd say during the emotional scenes, I'd say is where the pacing I feel like is probably the best in this movie. I'd say like there is one scene when our character, this is in the third act when like she walks out the door, and we just get like a series of shots of her face changing, and it honestly just looks really silly. There's no emotion felt there because it's rushed over and it's cut to shit so much where it looks silly and laughable. But yeah, there's a scene in this movie where one of the characters that this group of girls have put a spell on. He's coming out as gay, and that I thought was handled really well in this movie. And at first, I liked the message that the film was trying to get across, like how men are kind of hiding their feelings deep down to act tough around their friends and all that. And I thought that was a good message at first, is for men to show their emotions, but then it shoves the message down our throat. It gives us another Black Christmas type message where it's shoving it down our throat, especially in the third act. Like at first I liked it, but then it just became very forceful, and I don't like what the third act did, where it makes men look a lot more powerful to women, and I don't like that. I don't agree with anything that this ending says, because because in the end we're all human. But like I'm probably looking too much into it. This is a movie, so it's all fictional, but Yeah, that was my problem with Black Christmas. Is it makes men look bad, and obviously when I see these types of movies, like obviously I really support them because I like when we get like female guided horror films. I like that. So films like the Craft that handle the women and men side of things quite well. I don't need these types of endings anymore because at the end of the day, we are both equal. We have the same equal rights. We don't need to have a film where it's shoving down our throats saying men are tougher and stronger than women because that is so not true. Um, and films like The Craft proves that, where it shows that strong side of women, and it shows that we are equal and how women can be just as strong as men. But yeah, like I don't like to get into that type of stuff on my channel. When I did my Black Christmas review, that was something I tried to avoid at all costs. But just the ending to this just really pissed me off, and I really had to speak about it because that was something that really got on my nerves watching the ending of this film. But anyways, guys, that is my review for the Craft Legacy. Let me know down in the comments. Have you seen the Craft Legacy? What did you think of it? And while you're down there, let me know what you thought of the first Craft as well, and which one do you prefer? I know this is a hated sequel, but are you actually someone who actually likes a sequel? Are you on the same page as everyone else? Are you someone who really doesn't like this sequel? Let me know all your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section down below. So anyways, guys, I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, or night, wherever you are, and I will see you in the next video. Alright, bye.